Welcome, students. I am Aurora, the artificial intelligence system on Spacegate Station. In this episode, you will be reviewing the difference between primary and secondary sources and their implications in literature, history, and science. Please stand by for transfer to Spacegate Station.
Yes, Dr. Spinner. I received your notes on my draft evaluation report on the scientific and research activities here on the station. Yes, I agree the sections that outline the primary and secondary research sources being used for the various projects being developed here still need some additional work. I promise to work on clarifying that section for you and have it by the end of shift today. Yes, ma'am. Spacegate Station out.
Specialist Barber, I'm sorry that your draft report was not considered acceptable by Dr. Spinner from the NASA Research Directorate.
Aurora, there is a big difference between a report needing a little tweaking and a report being considered not acceptable.
Processing. A tweak is defined as the process of twisting or pulling something sharply. I am confused. I do not see how you could physically interact with Dr. Spinner when she is on Earth, which is 238,855 miles away.
No, Aurora, in this context, it just means doing a fine adjustment to a mechanism or system.
Interesting. I do not see how this definition would apply to your report. I have reviewed the content, and the sections that refer to primary and secondary sources needs more than tweaking. I would suggest more appropriate words would be revision, reformation, revamping, reworking, reconstruction. And that, Specialist Barber, is just the R's.
Thank you, Aurora. I get the point. The problem is, I just don't have a clear understanding of the difference between a primary and secondary source, particularly when it comes to different types of research areas.
Processing. Primary sources are immediate, first-hand accounts of a topic from people who had a direct connection with it. Secondary sources are one step removed from primary sources, though they often quote or otherwise use primary sources. They can cover the same topic, but add a layer of interpretation and analysis.
That was very well said, Aurora, but I already understand the basic definitions of primary and secondary sources. My problem is determining which is which in the context of different areas of study like literature, history, and sciences.
Interesting. Perhaps you could ask some of the Spacegate crew about the perspectives on the subject. They all have very eclectic backgrounds and could probably provide some very good insight.
Wow, that's a great idea, Aurora. Why don't you keep an eye on my station here while I go check on that?
Specialist Barber, I am an artificial intelligence system built into Spacegate Station. I do not have an ophthalmological organ for visual perception.
No, Aurora, I was just using another idiom. It just means to watch something very carefully to make sure that it is safe and not causing any trouble.
Thank you, Specialist Barber. I will save that idiom for future use.
Please do. Well, wish me luck.
Specialist Barber, luck refers to success or failure brought by chance rather than through one's own actions. I do not see how this would be an effective choice for a scientific inquiry.
Why do I do this to myself? Oh, hello, Dr. Garofano. What are you up to?
Well, I'm trying to get some light refraction readings from the lunar surface using our new observation port. What can I do to help you?
Well, I'm working on updating my annual report for Dr. Spinner on all the research activities on the station. And I'm kind of having a lot of difficulty summarizing basically the characteristics of the primary and secondary sources that are being used. I was wondering if you could help me understand the concepts a little bit better.
Well, you'd be surprised to know, Specialist Barber, that when I first went to college, I was actually a history major. And from the perspective of history, a primary source is really a first-hand account from someone that was actually present during a specific period of time. Right, Aurora?
Yes, Dr. Carafano. As it relates to history and literature, a primary source would involve oral history, interviews, diaries, letters, photographs, and drawings of events, and court testimony of an eyewitness, a document or object that was created by an individual or group as part of their daily lives. These documents are written or spoken using I statements to indicate direct observation of or participation in an event.
Okay, well, that makes sense, but what about secondary sources?
Well, you see, a secondary source would be a summary, secondhand report or analysis from someone that wasn't present at the event, but may have heard about it through either reading or hearing it from someone else.
Some examples of that, Dr. Carafano, include books or articles written on a topic, artwork depicting an event, letters or diaries recounting a version of events told to the author by another source.
Very good, Aurora. However, we need to also include such things as a secondhand report or even hearsay evidence.
Second person or hearsay testimony is an account repeated by someone who did not actually participate in the event. Examples are newspaper accounts from interviews of observers, letters that repeat a story told to the writer, drawings based on other person's observations, or a book written about a topic.
That was very good, Aurora. Specialist Barber, really, whether something is a primary or secondary source kind of depends on what you're asking. For example, a material can be either a primary or a secondary source, depending on what specific question you're asking.
That is correct, Dr. Carafano. For example, a Baltimore newspaper's account of Lincoln's death that includes unattributed accounts of what happened at Ford's Theater contains secondhand testimony. If your question is what happened at Ford's Theater that night, this would be a secondary source of information. But if your question is how people in Baltimore heard about Lincoln's assassination and what did they hear, then the newspaper is a primary source for answering that question.
Wow, thank you, Aurora. That is very interesting and potentially very confusing.
Well, you see, Specialist Barber, when you're asking yourself, is this a primary or secondary source, you need to ask very specific questions that can help you determine the nature and the scope of what you're looking at. And I think Aurora could probably help us here.
Of course, Dr. Carafano. When determining if something is a primary or secondary source, one should ask, 1. How does the author know these details? Was the author present at the event? 2. Where does this information come from? It is a personal experience, eyewitness account, or report written by others. 3. Are the author's conclusions based on a single piece of evidence, or have many sources been considered? Examples: diary entries along with third-party eyewitness accounts, impressions of contemporaries, newspaper accounts. Regardless, all source materials of whatever type must be assessed critically, and even the most scrupulous and thorough work is viewed through the eyes of the writer or interpreter.
Thanks, Aurora. I couldn't have said that better myself.
Well, this is very helpful, and this covers literature and history-based projects, but what about science?
Specialist Barber, you're in luck. Garrett Biedenbaugh, the First Alert meteorologist with Action News JAX in Florida, is in Lab 2 working on a special project with Engineer Ross. As a scientist, I bet he would have a very unique perspective on the scientific application to these two concepts.
Well, that is great news. Thank you so much, Dr. Carafano, for all your help. See you later.
Bye.
Well, Mr. Biedenbaugh, your monitoring system should have all the power it needs to begin processing the global data stream.
Well, thank you, Engineer Ross. I appreciate your help on this project. When it is done, the severe weather forecasting system will be a great resource for the people of Earth.
I think that in the field of meteorology, having an understanding of severe weather is really important.
Absolutely. You see, meteorologists are tasked with providing weather predictions to their viewers to help them make the most informed decisions, especially when it involves severe weather.
Processing. Accurate weather data is an important component in getting people the information they need to better prepare their communities with recommendations on how to remain as safe as possible during severe weather events. When discussing the weather, forecasters often cite the state of the atmosphere, including elements such as temperature, clouds, and wind. Severe weather refers to the dangerous effects created by these changes in the atmosphere that result in tornadoes, extreme thunderstorms, or blizzards.
Correct, Aurora. Severe storms are often packed with heavy rains, strong winds, hail, and lightning. They can really wreak havoc in a short time.
When fast-moving, highly localized storms move through a region, it is extremely important that people and businesses need to be aware so they can take swift action. Meteorologists use many different tools for different purposes. These devices include thermometers, barometers, and anemometers for measuring temperature, air pressure, and wind speed.
That's true. However, meteorologists use other tools as well.
Processing. Additional resources for evaluating the weather include special balloons that have a weather pack on them that measures temperature, air pressure, wind speed, and wind direction in all the layers of the troposphere. Meteorologists also use satellites to observe cloud patterns around the world, and radar is used to measure precipitation.
Using this data, we plug into our supercomputers, which use numerical forecast equations to create forecast models of the atmosphere to help us predict severe weather.
That's amazing.
Hi, Engineer Ross, Mr. Biedenbaugh. How's your new experimental project going?
It's been fascinating. I'm learning so much about severe weather.
We should have it up and running with Aurora's help within the next couple of days.
You two will have to excuse me. I'm gonna go check the transmission power cables. I want to make sure it's handling the load adequately. I'll be back.
Is there something I can help you with, Specialist Barber?
Well, there is. You see, Dr. Carafano suggested that I stop by to see if you can help me with my annual report on all the research activities here on the station. I'm having difficulty with the section on primary and secondary sources, and I was hoping you could help me, especially in terms of meteorology.
Well, I believe I could help. This project I'm on is a perfect example of the primary and secondary sources in science.
Great. What are you working on?
It is a global AI-based severe weather forecasting system.
Cool. What does that mean?
Processing. Mr. Biedenbaugh is helping to develop an AI-controlled system that takes individual weather reports from meteorologists all over the world in real time and combines that with satellite data and the Global Historical Climate Database. It is an expansion of the old Global Observing System used for monitoring the state of the atmosphere and the ocean surface to increase the accuracy of weather analysis, forecasts, and warnings.
Correct. This new system will allow us to understand variations in climate both now and over time around the world instantly by accessing an AI-based weather reporting system.
Wow. Okay, so how do the concept of primary and secondary sources come into play when we're talking about the science of weather?
Actually, both concepts are extremely important in the field of meteorology, right, Aurora?
In the science of meteorology, observations are made in real time so that weather analysis, forecast, and severe weather warnings can be presented to the public. A weather presenter or broadcaster person presents the weather forecast daily on radio, television, or internet news broadcast. This weather presenter becomes a primary source for the community of local, regional, or national weather forecasting. Since the meteorologist is often actually present at the weather event using technical resources like radar or measuring equipment providing real-time data. They are making direct observations.
Wow, okay, that is amazing. But what about secondary sources in meteorology?
Well, you see, Specialist Barber, we couldn't do forecasting without the use of secondary sources in meteorology, and I think Aurora could help here.
Meteorologists must monitor the data from various sources to track changes in the weather through time. One aspect is previous weather conditions under similar circumstances that have occurred in the past that were previously reported by others. An example is the Global Historical Climate Database, or HCLIM. This database encompasses a collection of 12,452 meteorological records in 118 countries from as early as 1890.
Meteorology sure is a fascinating science. Thank you, Mr. Biebenbaugh. I think this has really helped me understand the scientific perspective of primary and secondary sources.
No problem. I love talking about the weather.
Well, I will, at this point, probably need to go back and finish this report. I will see you later.
All right. Aurora, why don't you go ahead and show me the latest global weather models?
The latest global weather models will be visible in your desktop computer momentarily.
Yes, Dr. Spinner. I'm glad you liked the final copy of the Scientific and Research Activities Report. Yes, I agree the sections on primary and secondary resources definitely much more concise than it was before. You're more than welcome. Yes, ma'am. Spacegate Station out.
It seems, Specialist Barber, that the crew of Spacegate Station were able to help you develop a better understanding of the concepts of primary and secondary sources.
Yes, that is true, Aurora. And plus, I got to learn a lot about severe weather and what goes into meteorology and provide people with accurate forecasts.
The new system that Mr. Biebenbaugh is helping to develop should make a significant difference in worldwide forecasting.
You know, it is important to be prepared if it's going to be raining cats and dogs.
Processing. Specialist Barber, I am confused. Rain is liquid precipitation which falls from the sky because of clouds becoming saturated or filled with water droplets. I do not see how it is possible for feline and canine animals to fall from the sky unless someone intentionally put them up there. This would be the height of animal cruelty, as the fall alone could cause serious injury.
No, Aurora, that is not what I meant.
Someone needs to contact the World Animal Protection Agency regarding this type of animal abuse and end the suffering of these poor animals.
Aurora, no animals were being hurt.
Specialist Barber, I can't see how you could sit idly by while these poor animals are being mistreated by being catapulted into the sky, only impact the earth from great heights. I thought better of you.
Aurora, raining cats and dogs is just another idiom. It just means that it's raining unusually hard.
Specialist Barber, I think it is completely inhumane to compare a hard rain to the abuse of poor defenseless animals. I'm sorry, but I must go now. This is very upsetting.
Aurora, no animals are being harmed. It is just another idiom. Aurora, I gotta stop using as many idioms with you.
This concludes our latest episode of Spacegate Station. Please join us on our continuing adventures as the crew of Spacegate Station provides engaging enrichment or remediation-based instruction to improve your understanding of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, terminating communication with Earth.